Hello, my name is Nikita Stark, Human Dynamics Specialist and Alchemy Facilitator. Today is part one of a 6-part series discussing the architecture of the self. The first part is the mask we wear. If you find this work is landing for you, if it's helping you slow down and look inward, then please support this channel by liking and subscribing and share with someone who is also ready to go deeper into this self-inquiry to find true freedom in their life. Now let's get on with it, shall we? Every mammal needs attachment to survive. A baby can't feed itself, it can't regulate its nervous system or protect its own body. Without connection, it simply dies. That is why attachment always wins. When we are born to parents carrying their own unhealed stuff, the child quickly learns that authenticity can threaten their connection. If our feelings are too loud, if our needs are inconvenient, or they're not palatable for our parents, if our joy is too overwhelming, the parent's nervous system can't hold it. So we compromise and trade authenticity for attachment because our survival actually depends on it. This is how the mask is born. We don't choose this consciously, but it's more of a trauma response. It's the small body adapting to the environment, shaping itself to keep the parent close enough to stay alive. Over time, that adaptation hardens into what we call a personality. And then you've got the pleasing one, the achiever, the caretaker, the rebel. They're not random traits in the slightest. They are actually very clever strategies designed to manage the unpredictable field of the parent's nervous system. And often it runs deeper still. We don't just inherit eye colour or bone structure, we inherit nervous systems shaped by what came before us. And that could be unresolved grief, war, poverty, abandonment, persecution. All these things our ancestors never had the chance or support to heal remain in the body and they get passed forward. So, a mother who flinches at anger may be carrying that echo of her own father's violence. A dad who can't tolerate sadness may be just repeating what his own parents silenced in him. When a child arrives in such a field, they are adapting not only to their parents' wounds, but to generations of unprocessed pain. And the mask is not just personal, it's actually ancestral. It carries the weight of what whole lineages can't face. And that child unconsciously wears it, keep the system intact. So this is where the ego takes root. And it's like a set of archetypes that protect us from being abandoned or shamed or ignored. They're bloody brilliant adaptations because they kept us here. But as adults, those same masks begin to really limit us, and it's like we're operating on outdated software. So let's have a look at egoic archetypes. Dr. Shafali speaks very powerfully about this in her book. It's called A Radical Awakening. Get it? She describes how the ego shapes itself into archetypes like the perfectionist or the martyr or the caretaker or the rebel, all the roles designed to protect the child from the terror of losing connection. At the time, they're genius. They keep the nervous system regulated enough to survive. But the problem is, we forget they were never who we really were. We confuse this mask for the face. And we build careers and marriages and businesses and even entire identities around them. Because these roles are rooted in fear, they come at a cost, which is chronic stress, anxiety, broken relationships, cycles of shame, burnout, disease. The archetype that once saved us become the cage we can't see that we're actually living in. So some of the most common archetypes might look like this. The pleaser. That child who learned that love comes when they keep everyone happy. they smile when they don't mean it, or they soften their voice to avoid conflict and say yes when every single part of them is screaming no. So, as adults, people pleasers struggle to know what they actually want because their attention is constantly scanning for what will make others more comfortable and more palatable for them. Then we've got the perfectionist, for example. Now, this is the one who discovered very early on that mistakes brought shame, not safe to make a mistake. So they become flawless. Every detail under control, every grade, every achievement. As adults, perfectionists hold themselves to impossible standards. Their worth is like it's tied to their performance. So rest feels really unsafe and failure is bloody unthinkable. Then we've got the martyr, the child who learned that their needs were just too much. So they disappeared into service. They became the helper, the caretaker, the one who sacrificed so everyone else could manage. So as adults, martyrs are exhausted, but they're unable to stop. Saying no feels like betrayal. Like even when they're running on empty, they can't do it. Then we've got the rebel. And this person refused to comply. I really, really resonate with this. Their strategy was to oppose, to resist, and to push back against control. It kept them intact when submission felt like death. As adults, this sort of archetype sabotages stability because authority of any kind feels really threatening, and they equate freedom with defiance. And they'll do it even if it costs them their peace. But anyway, it's not to be judged. Each archetype began as protection. None of them are wrong. They were the child's way of staying attached. But when we confuse them for our true self, we end up living in this survival loop long after the danger has passed. Our true nature. So beneath every archetype is something untouched. And you can call it essence, you can call it consciousness, call it the unconditional self, whatever you like. But the same thing is, long before the mask, there was simply life moving through us. It's curious and playful and expansive, and it's unafraid to express. That is our true nature. And you know what? Science points to it too. At birth, our nervous system is designed for openness. The baby's brain is wired for exploration and creativity and connection. Cortisol levels are low, oxytocin and dopamine are high, and the whole body is primed for growth and bonding. Fear and contraction are learned later. When safety is really inconsistent in their experience, in other words, stress physiology is acquired and it's not original, it comes later. Now, if we look at spiritual traditions, they describe the same thing, but in a different language. The Buddhists call it Buddha nature, and the Christian mystics spoke of the divine spark. Now, quantum term is just coherence, the state where energy flows without resistance. But whatever name you give it, the truth is the same. Underneath this mask, we're already whole. So this level of self-inquiry, this work, is about to remembering what was always there. And when that mask loosens, what emerges is just presence. And it's a way of being that is lighter and freer, more creative. And that doesn't come with performance or defense, simply life. And it lives in all of us. So let's have a look at why the mask shapes our reality. And first, I'm going to touch on the psychological view. Before the age of 7 or 8, a child's brain spends most of its time in theta waves, in the same state we actually enter in hypnosis. In that state, there's no filter, no questioning, no ability to weigh up truth. Whatever is experienced in the environment, whichever words are spoken, whatever pattern is modeled, it's absorbed as whole. They become baseline reality. If the baseline is that needs are ignored, that child concludes that needs don't matter. If the baseline is chaos or things are volatile, the child learns to play small to avoid being a target. And if love is conditional or given when the child performs, well done, or pleases or excels, then the nervous system wires survival to performance rather than their authentic self. What is really critical to understand here is that the feeling we learnt to avoid, i.e., panic or dread or disgust, abandonment, becomes the very feeling our body unconsciously seeks out in adulthood. It's simply familiar. The nervous system reads familiar as safe, even when it's destructive. This is why a person raised by a narcissistic parent may not register red flags in their relationships. Their disgust reflex was numbed so early that what should repulse them instead feels like home. The body is not drawn to what is healthy. It's drawn to what is known and familiar. So this is just programming, and until it is brought to the awareness, the subconscious will keep replaying the same dynamics to maintain what it believes is survival. Now, imagine this multiplied across millions, entire populations carrying these unhealed wounds. They're unconsciously recreating the same cycles in their families, in their communities, in governments. We don't recognize it as the mirror that it is. We blame the mirror. And instead of seeing what is being shown, we go to war with it. We project outward blame and shame, and then we demand others change, believing that if people behave the way we prefer, we would finally be at peace. It's an illusion. The truth is, peace can never be manufactured externally. When we turn inward and heal the original wound, the projection changes. That mirror will soften on both the micro level of our relationships and then the macro level of society. What we see shifts when we carry these shifts. The wars outside end when the wars inside no longer need to be fought. As above, so is below. Now that brings me on to the spiritual view. Okay, every wisdom tradition speaks of our original essence. Like I said earlier, the Buddhists call it the Buddha nature, or then you've got the divine spark from the Christians. Or you can just call it the self. Across languages and cultures, the message is the same. Beneath conditioning and under those wounds, there is something whole and untouched. But as children, when authenticity threatens the attachment, we cover that essence. We put on the mask. We forget in spiritual language that the wound is the veil, and that film that it hides under that radiance we were born with. Okay, Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is within." Luke 17:21. Yet most of us spend our lives seeking it outside, in approval, in relationships, in possessions. The Hindus remind us, you are what your, hang on, I've got to get this right. You are what your deep driving desire is. As your desire is, so is your will. As your will is, so is your deed. There we go. As your deed is, so is your destiny. When the desire is survival, the destiny is like a life built on masks. Then we've got Eckhart Tolle. He calls this the pain body, the collection of unresolved emotional imprints that rise up again and again. And he says, the pain that you create now is always some form of non-acceptance, some form of unconscious resistance to what is. The pain body feeds on repetition, on reenacting the very wound we never healed. From a spiritual perspective, our reality becomes the stage where the wound plays itself out until we remember. This is why this quote exists. The wound is the place where the light enters you. The mask is not just a survival strategy. It's like an invitation back home. Many people interpret spirituality through the same wound that gave rise to that mask that they wear. In Christianity, especially, this shows up as like black and white thinking, the belief that there is only one truth and one right path and all others are wrong. From this place, the world it's divided into saved and unsaved, righteous and sinful, good and evil. Now, that perspective may feel like certainty, but it's rooted in fear. Fear that if others are right, then I'm lost. Fear that difference threatens safety. So the strategy becomes to fight the opposition in the name of righteousness. And if we can destroy what we call wrong, then we'll finally be safe. But this is not actually the way of Jesus. Jesus never taught the defense of dogma. He taught presence. He met people where they were at without needing them to be wrong first. He said, love your neighbour as yourself. Mark 12:31. Not love them once they agree with you. He modelled compassion and non-attachment. And it's not fear-based control. Not that I can see anyway. The wound twists this teaching. It uses scripture as like a shield. So instead of healing what is triggered within, we project it outward. We wage holy wars, sometimes literally, and sometimes they're emotional, because the mask cannot tolerate ambiguity. It needs certainty to feel safe. There is a difference between noticing from neutrality and reacting from fear. Neutrality means seeing clearly, recognizing what is stirred within you and tending to that wound and then taking aligned action. Fear means needing others to be wrong so we can feel right. And that looks like hiding behind text instead of living the spirit of it. When spirituality is lived through that mask, it becomes yet another performance of the wound. When it is lived through presence, it becomes healing. When we do not see this, it's like we live life as if the wound is the truth and the mask is who we actually are. And then we chase peace. And we look outside in wars, in blame, in controlling others, forgetting that the kingdom was never out there to begin with. The forgetting is actually the wound. The remembering is the healing. When we identify with anything external, and it could be a belief system, a role, or even an opinion, we cling to it as if our life depends on it. And in a way, it kind of does, because the mask believes that without the external, there's nothing left. True freedom is something completely different. It's aligned presence. It's not identifying with a form or concept, but it's living from the essence beneath them. It's allowing what you might call God or source or consciousness to move through you unhindered. But when ego takes over, we loop and we blame. We need others to behave in a certain way so that we can finally feel at peace. If this stirs something in you and you're triggered, just pause and ask, why am I outsourcing my peace to someone else? Where do my feelings take place? Are they inside me or outside me? The moment you remember the answer, you found freedom. So let's look at the quantum view, because we've looked at the psychological and the spiritual. Now let's bring it together with a little bit of science. Quantum physics, it reveals a universe far less fixed than our eyes perceive. At the smallest scale, particles don't behave like solid matter, but they're more like possibilities. In superposition, a particle exists in many states at once until it's observed. Magic! The act of observation collapses the wave into a single outcome. So, reality in this sense is actually about participating. It's shaped by what is perceived. Then you've got the many worlds interpretation, and it takes it a little bit further. Instead of one reality collapsing, all possibilities unfold in parallel. And it blows my mind. Every choice, every observation is branching from this perspective. Life is not like a single line, but a vast web of potential timelines, each one real. The question becomes not what is truth, but which truth am I tuned into now? It just, sorry, it just blows my mind. It's so amazing. And then you've got string theory, and that suggests that the universe is like vibrating strings of energy, 10 or more dimensions deep. Biocentrism, as Robert Lanza describes, flips that usual order. It's not that life emerges from the universe, but that the universe emerges through consciousness. And space and time are constructs of perception. And without a conscious observer, there is no out there at all. So now let's bring this back into the mask. If reality is participatory and vibrational and filtered through consciousness, then our wounds are not private burdens, are they? They are organizing principles. A child whose nervous system learnt dread and rejection or unworthiness, they don't carry those feelings just internally. They carry them as a lens through which potential collapses. They tune into that branch of reality that confirms the wound. They vibrate that string in a way that attracts what resonates with them, the familiar. When we live from this mask, we're entangled with survival frequencies. The world we meet is one of repetition, basically. The same relationship burdens, the same self-sabotage, and that same scarcity. And it's because consciousness organizes itself around coherence. The mask is coherent with fear, so fear is, of course, what it attracts. When we return to presence, that field changes. The nervous system regulates, the brain and the heart synchronize. Coherence. And that replaces chaos. In that state, the wave of potential collapses differently. We perceive opportunities we could not see before because we're not looking through this very narrow lens. We widen it. We attract people and experiences aligned with our wholeness, and we shift timelines. Quantum physics doesn't necessarily say thoughts create things in the most simplistic way it's often packaged. It says our state of consciousness determines which version of reality we interact with. Every moment is a branching. So that means healing is a literal shift in the probability space we call life. I think that's just so magic. Daryl Bunker, who channels Bashar, describes reality as nothing more than a projection of preference and state. The world we experience is not fixed, it's filtered through energetic frequency we occupy, whether that be fear or shame or lack. These collapse reality into timelines that match them. So then you've got gratitude and coherence and joy, and these collapse into worlds that reflect those states too. And if you look at it from that perspective, we're not all living in the same world. Each of us is tuning into a version of reality that matches our vibration. That's why two people walk through the same circumstances and have completely different experiences. One of them is anchored in fear and they'll only see threat, and another is anchored in coherence and perceives opportunity. They're both real, but they're parallel branches of possibility. Most of us were never taught this. As kids, we were told the world is simply is, and we must endure whatever hand we are dealt. It feels like Russian roulette. So maybe we get lucky, maybe we don't. But in truth, the trajectory of our lives is not chance, it's resonance. We move into the world that matches the frequency that we carry. This principle is not only personal, it's been observed collectively. And I don't know if you would have heard this, many of you have, but in the 70s, researchers studying transcendental meditation reported what became known as the Maharishi effect. When a critical mass of people entered deep meditative coherence, crime rates dropped, accidents reduced, even warfare softened. The collective field shifted in measurable ways. The implication is staggering. If individual wounds shape individual realities, then collective wounds shape collective realities. And if healing shifts frequency, then personal healing isn't private at all, is it? It's planetary. Every time one person loosens their mask and they move it into a new world, and the field we share tilts a little closer to coherence, we can heal the world by healing ourselves. Now let's just do a little reflective practice, okay? Don't concern yourself with stripping away your identity or forcing yourself to be authentic in every moment, because that's kind of inverted. That would only be another mask, the mask of spiritual purity. So what we're doing here is a bit more subtle. We're learning to see the mask while it's happening, to feel its roots in the body, and to glimpse what lies beneath it. So, step 1, catch the shift. Throughout your day, watch for the small moments when you bend yourself out of shape. Maybe you soften your no into a maybe. Maybe you tidy up the house before someone arrives, even though you're exhausted. Maybe you over-explain a very simple decision. And these tiny movements are the mask in action. So don't judge them, just observe them, just catch them in the present moment. Step 2, feel it in the body. When you notice the mask, just pause, drop attention into your body. Where do you feel it? Is it like a tightening in the jaw, a flutter in the tummy, a tension across the chest? Stay with that sensation just for a breath or two. This is your nervous system remembering what it once had to do to keep attachment secure. Step 3, name the archetype if you can see it. Just name what you see. Are you being a people pleaser in that moment, or a perfectionist, or are you being a rebel, a martyr, or an overachiever, whatever it is? Acknowledge it as a role, not as who you are. This naming begins to separate the mask from the essence. Step 4, remember your essence. Bring your hand to your heart or to your belly and just imagine the child you once were before that mask went on. Picture the play, the joy, the unfiltered curiosity. Breathe as if you are breathing into them and just say, I see you. You're safe now. You don't look at this as implicit. Just reintroduce the nervous system to a state of safety that it used to know. Step 5. See if you can notice the frequency. And this is a quantum lens. Feel the difference in vibration. The mask contracts. It's narrow, it's tense, and it's repetitive. The essence is expansive. It feels softer, can't talk now, more open, more coherent. If you can imagine the two states as like a radio station, ask yourself, which one am I tuned into right now? Which one do I prefer to broadcast? Step 6, journal the mirrors. At the end of the day, write down 1 or 2 moments when you notice the mask, and don't criticize it, okay? But just observe, then reflect. How did reality mirror this? Did the mask attract frustration, or was it misunderstanding or exhaustion? Did the glimpse of essence attract softness or connection? This is how you begin to see the link between inner state and outer projection. It's so important. Don't concern yourself with abolishing the mask this week, okay? It's about seeing it clearly enough to understand that choice is there every time. And each time you notice, you create tiny little cracks. Through those cracks, of course, you're going to see light. Next week, we go deeper into the voice of the wound, the inner narrator that grows out of the mask and shapes how we speak to ourselves. The mask is really clever and it kept you alive. But if you want to move beyond survival and begin living from your essence, it takes more than awareness alone. It takes courage to sit with what comes up and the right space to hold it. So if you've been watching this and you're ready to go further, I want to remind you that this is the work I hold in my sessions, in my containers, whether it's a one-to-one or a course. Please get in contact with me if you need support on this journey. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week when we go deeper into the architecture of the self.